The carnivore diet, I think that's probably the biggest fitness diet trend of 2024. It's like it has so much good things about it, like sticking to whole nutrient dense foods, lots of meat and protein. It gets so many things right. And then when they just start fear mongering over oats and vegetables, I'm like, oh, like you have to go ruin a good thing.
I'm really interested to see the long term evidence on that, because it is such a new thing. And like, don't get me wrong, I see people that do the carnivore diet and they transform their health and stuff like that.
Yeah, because they're eating high protein and they're in a deficit.
Which is great, but almost all of the evidence points towards eating plenty of colour, eating fibre, eating protein, and just not being silly, having balance with it. And even there was your guy, the carnivore MD, who was full carnivore, and then he changed up, started introducing carbs and stuff, even though he read a book about how you shouldn't do that. And then he was all always having these health issues. So super interesting to see in the next few years. But if someone does a carnivore diet, it works for them, you're running the risk of potential long-term effects, but it's going to be better than the standard diet, most likely. But I just think for the most part, if people can just apply a bit of common sense and have some balance, it's going to be a much better way to go about the full situation.
Yeah. What do you think about veganism?
I don't mind veganism. I couldn't do a vegan diet myself personally. And I think a lot of people that do the vegan diet start to lack nutrients in terms of protein, but there's certain people that are like beasts on the vegan diet.
Yeah, but they're the genetic outliers.
But there was your guy that went in Joe Rogan and he rinsed your other guy. Did you ever see that?
Which episode was
it? Was the Game Changers one. He actually he won that argument. But I think the vegan diet can be done wrong. Lots of diets can be done wrong. It can also be done right. Like there's some of my clients and stuff like that are vegan. So I'm very much each to their own. Find a diet that works for you, and as long as you can sustain that long term, and as long as you need a lot more knowledge to successfully do a vegan diet, get the nutrients and get the protein and stuff like that. But if you can do that, I have no issue with it.
Yeah, I've had a few vegan clients before, and the things that I just do straight away, I'm like, okay, as long as you're hitting your calories and macros, that's absolutely fine. Let's perhaps get a vegan protein powder in there to make things a little bit easier. Let's have some B vitamins, whatever kind of else you need to supplement things. And when you kind of just tick all the boxes, then it's fine. Sometimes I hate to harp on about it, but it's just the truth that the amount of calories you eat per day is the most important thing. And when I'm start working with someone, obviously first of all it depends on where are they in the scope of beginner to advanced. And if they're obese, literally starting out, to get someone tracking every single thing in their app can be terrifying. It can be daunting, and it might be quite uncomfortable as well. So for the first week or two, I might say hey, let's just clean up your make better choices. Let's just cook more meals, because the last thing you want to do is just dive into the deep end. And as we kind of spoke about earlier, get burnt out and just say, screw this. And so you've coached a lot of people via not only ebooks and apps, you've probably done some one-on-one and everything. What are some of the most common nutrition and also training mistakes that you see people make starting out?
The most common mistake is your reaction to when you have periods of imperfection. No one is going to be perfect all the time, but if you go 500 over your calories for the day and your reaction is to think that you've ruined everything and you may as well binge all weekend, that's when you actually lose progress. It's never the one event, but it's your reaction to that. So anytime that you do have a bit of a slip up or you do go over your calories slightly, if you can react by just going back to normal, that's the difference between people that get long-term results and those that don't. It's not never making mistakes, but it's your reaction to them. There's 3,500 calories in a pound of fat, so you'd have to eat above that. So if my maintenance is 3,000, I'd have to eat nearly 7,000 calories to gain a pound. So go a few hundred over for the day. Just get back to it.
Yeah, people also forget if they're in a deficit and then they go over that, it's not only did you not hit maintenance, you're probably still in a bit of a deficit. So people freak out. And an analogy that changed my entire view on exactly that, it was, if you drop your phone on the ground, would you pick it up or would you stamp on it 10 times?
You got a flat tire, would you change it or would you stab the other three?
Exactly. It's when the phone one particularly, because we're all fucking obsessed with our phones, when someone said that to me and I dropped that thing the whole time, I'm surprised it's in one piece.
iPhone screens are way better.
Bro, that thing's bulletproof. It's a Nokia 3310. But when I drop it, I'm it's just the perfect analogy for me. And so if you ever, and then you look at percentages, right? Let's say you're on cutting calories, 2,500, and you eat a Mars bar that's 200. Divide 200 into that amount. It's a percentage.
It's fuck all difference.
The most common things that I've seen are meal timing, people obsessing over it, be it intermittent fasting, 6 meals a day, thinking that they need to have like the post-workout anabolic window covered. Just people stressing about meal timing so much. And that was me when I was like a college student. I'd be like prepping all my meals, like 6 a day, going into college with them. This is before I dropped out. Like, I remember one day I even brought like a protein shake in and it spilt all over my books. And I was like, I have to do it. It's freaking just making my life miserable over the clock, being a slave to the clock. Another one is secret eating. There's this show on, I think it's E4 or whatever. You can look it up on YouTube if you just search up secret eaters, and it has given me more awareness and education than any like course or study or anything. You just it basically, it's like a show that follows overweight people, that puts like cameras in their house and it asks them to report back on how much they're eating, and they report saying like, I'm eating 2,000 calories a day, and then like they fact check it, they see all the clips and they're eating like 8,000. So people, even when they hire a coach and they check in with you, you're like, you always know when there's something up. You know, people are just not being honest with themselves.
And sometimes they're not even doing it on purpose. They just, like a lot of people that struggle to lose weight underestimate how many calories they're eating, and people that struggle to gain weight overestimate how many calories they're eating, because genetically everyone's different. Like, it does come down to calories in, calories out, but genetics play a part in your appetite and how much you actually want to eat. So that's it's usually not to do with metabolism, it's more to do with your genetics and how hungry you are. But people they massively underestimate how many calories they're actually eating. And the same when you do start tracking, you don't have to track for life, but it just brings so much awareness to it.
So one thing I had, like, you know, I do a little bit of one-on-one clients still, you know, usually take on maybe like 20 guys, you know, every couple of months. And so one guy, like, if we just weren't seeing results, and he was telling me he's eating this much, and I was like, it just like isn't adding up. And I go, can you send me a picture like on your phone? Just snap a picture to me on top of like what your MyFitnessPal screenshots or whatever. You just snap a picture of me and like show me what you're eating. And the meals were just like massive, covered in mayonnaise.
Sauces and all.
Sauce. I was like, this just looks like a takeaway. And then they'd log it as like, you know, chicken and rice. So that's the second most common thing I see. The third most common thing, and this might piss a few people off, is people thinking they're eating too much healthy foods, and people thinking that these healthy foods have like no calories in them. And they can just like eat as much sweet potato, peanut butter, you know, steaks, and
acai too. Like, they're fucking beautiful. Like, but like if you're polishing off one of them every day, like 700 calories, you're fucked.
Exactly. And so look, the world is facing an obesity crisis. You know, people are more out of shape than ever. What do you think is the root cause of it? It's a big debate, you know.
I think it's way too nuanced to say that there's one thing that's the root cause. There's going to be a lot of determinant factors. The accessibility to food is a massive one. If you wanted to overeat 100 years ago, it would be very hard because you only had access to certain foods. But if you want to overeat now, you can order Uber Eats and all that stuff. So the accessibility to food means that people are more like at the end of the day, obesity is caused by people consuming too many calories. That is not a debate, but the debate is what's causing people to consume too many calories. And I think a lot of it is the accessibility to a lot of highly processed, ultra-processed foods. Ultra-processed foods in moderation are completely fine. They're not harmful. But when that makes up the majority of your diet, you're going to be consuming way too many calories. But then there's genetics as well. There's mental health. There's how people cope with trauma. There's like so much factors that goes into why someone is obese, the house that they were born into. I would be fat too if my parents fed me lots of food. I love food. I have an unlimited appetite. I would just eat what's in front of me. So how can you look at a child that's maybe 13, 14 and said it's their fault? It's the parents' fault for what they've been feeding them. So like the house that you're born into, your economic status, like some people only have access to a certain amount of money. Sometimes the processed foods are cheaper or more affordable. Again, you could probably find healthy foods that are cheap as well, but some people they don't have much knowledge in nutrition. They're just going with what's cheap. So economic status, mental health, I could probably list about 10 or 20. There's hundreds of things that go into the obesity epidemic, but we just need to look at what's driving people to consume more calories than they burn.
All those things I fully agree with. I think if I had to choose one, which like there isn't one, but if I think the biggest factor is what you mentioned first, and it's just the availability of highly palatable foods. And so I think it was like Lane Norton who said that's what he thinks as well. But I was driving through Texas, and when I mean like there was a row of shops, 10 rows of shops, and 10 of them were just fast food. Like it's crazy. I've never seen anything like it. I think.
And portion sizes in America are ridiculous. Like
Absolutely
ridiculous.
huge. Yeah, so I think that would be like the number one reason